All right, friends, it's time to give you loyal listeners a discount on protein powder. You may or may not know, but I launched my very first protein powder 2 years ago. It's a grass-fed beef isolate with only 3 ingredients: grass-fed beef, either organic cacao or organic vanilla, and organic monk fruit. Now, if you don't want any of the added flavor and sweeteners, you can also just get unflavored. And no matter what flavor you choose, you're getting over 23 grams of protein per scoop, which is going to keep you full and satisfied between meals. I love starting my day with a Fab4 smoothie and breaking my fast with that much protein. It makes a serious difference in my cravings and blood sugar balance the rest of the day, and I've seen it with my clients as well. Now, I never thought I'd own a product company, but when I got pregnant with Sebastian, I realized the majority of protein powders were chemically extracted or enzymatically extracted, and I wanted to use heat and water only. I wanted minimal ingredients because we don't need those emulsifiers, fillers, or added vitamins, minerals, and probiotics. All of those additions increase the chances that it's not going to work for your body, whether it be bloating, digestion issues. I just wanted pure, clean protein to keep you full and satisfied so you could build the most delicious Fab4 smoothie. And I have to say, I'm pretty proud of the flavor. If you take a look at our reviews on Amazon, you'll see 5-star reviews for flavor. And that is key, because if you don't love your Fab4 smoothie and you don't love drinking your protein powder, you're not going to do it. It won't become a habit, and it's consistency that outpaces everything. So if you're here and you're listening and you want to give our protein powder a try, use the code podcast5 for $5 off your order. And let me know if you love it. My favorite ways to apply this protein powder is in my Fab4 smoothie, making freezer fudge, making chocolate milk, making hot chocolate, and throwing the unflavored into all my kids' baked goods. So let me know how you use it. Let me know if you love it, and share this podcast deal with your friends. I'm so excited about today's guest. Ellen Marie Bennett is much more than the Latinx female founder and the CEO of Hedley Bennett, a Los Angeles-based apron and workwear company whose ethos is to give pride and dignity to those in the kitchen and beyond. She is a dreamer, a hustler, a fighter, a doer, a maker, and a shaker. Ellen bootstrapped and has grown Hedley Bennett into a multi-million-dollar apron and kitchen gear brand that outfits restaurants worldwide, is sold in stores across the country, and can be seen on Food Network, Bravo, and is beloved by home cooks everywhere. Now, Ellen has released her new book, Dream First, Details Later, which shares Ellen's journey and her forged in the fire personal playbook for starting before you stop yourself and saying screw it to the perfect plan. She is a dear friend. I've actually sat down with her in an LA restaurant to pick her brain on how to build a business way back in the day with Fuel by Kelly. And I'm so excited that she wrote this book. Her approach is everything I stand by. It is get out there and do it before you scare yourself out of it. So let's get her tips on how to do just that. Dream first, details later. Let's do this. Ellen, I'm so excited. I feel like this podcast has been such a long time coming, like way all the way back to our little pokey date when you were like, okay, Kelly, this is what you got to do with your business. You're on the right track. But you're just such a powerhouse. You're such a supporter of female entrepreneurs. It is no surprise to me at all that you've built this multi-million-dollar business, and that you've always come from a place of like positivity and happiness, and your brand exudes that. So how did this all start for you? Can you start from the beginning?
Yes. And so good to see you. And you're amazing. And I will never forget that pokey date with you. So much fun. So many moons ago. But yeah, so I started my company, Hedley Bennett. It's an apron and kitchen gear brand, but it began in 2012. I hated our crappy uniforms at the 2-Michelin star restaurant where I worked. And it was really bizarre to me that we were ordering like $1,000 fish from Japan. And, they came in this beautiful, insanely large box where everyone, was like, the fish has arrived. And we were so careful about everything except the gear that everybody was wearing in the kitchen. And I wanted to change that. I wanted to make people look and feel, confidence and pride in the kitchen. Didn't matter if you were, the executive chef or a line cook. And in my case, I was a $10 an hour line cook. And I just was like, I need to fix this. And at that point in my journey, I had no idea if it was going to be a direct to consumer brand or a wholesale brand. I had no clue. All I wanted to do was make the perfect apron and take it from there. And I knew that if I could do that and I could give this to people as like a cape of armor in the kitchen, I could change the culinary world. And that seems probably appropriate of why my book is called Dream First, Details Later. I didn't have almost anything figured out. It was really just this decision that I wanted to do this. And then I began the journey. And it's been a long, windy, wild, intense adventure that I broke down in this book for people, because a lot of the times you hear about a story of success and it's like, and then they got this much investment and then this happened. And this was like the polar opposite. I was 24. I'm, raised by a single mama. And it was just like all the odds were stacked against this being a success. And, yet we survived through so many things and are still on the journey. So that's what the book is all about. But also Hedley and Bennett is now like a total kitchen gear brand for direct to consumer. So it's really gone through this like wild evolution that happens in any business. Just people don't really talk about it. It's like where you start and where you end is not the same place. So,
Yeah, it is. It is crazy. I love that you're willing to share kind of those stumbles and those falls and how you climb out of those troughs and make your way back out. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, if anyone is listening, all you have to do is look for the ampersand, little and signal symbol, because you can go to Pisana and all the waiters are wearing that. You can turn on Top Chef and all the teams are in their different colors. Like it gives me the chills even saying this for you, because to think that you had this idea, and if you had thought it would be that big, would you have been scared of it?
I think I would have been a little bit scared. And the fact that I just began and took the conviction and the passion and the really adrenaline was what made me leap out the window and say, I'm doing this. And also my very first order, which is the prologue in the book, is my chef and I standing in his kitchen and him saying to me, hey, there's a girl, she's going to make us aprons. Do you want to buy one? And me blurting out, Chef, I have an apron company. I'll make you those aprons. And I didn't actually have an apron company. I actually had nothing, but I had already had the idea of it. And it felt like, the skies ripped open and this opportunity just got like dumped in front of me. And I wasn't just going to leave it there. So I took that leap and I had absolutely nothing planned, but it made me get out of my own way to just start the journey. Because I was like, I've been thinking about this and he found somebody else to make them. I can't let that happen. I need to do something about that. So, sometimes, a lot of times you're not ready and you'll never be ready. And you just have these like signs from the world pelting you in the face. And you just have to be like, okay, world, I see you. I'm going to take that leap. And I'm going to take that pelt as a sign to just go and begin and figure things out, because you learn so much when you're actually doing the stuff versus thinking about it and theorizing and strategizing. I'm not saying you don't plan, right? It's details later, not details never.
Yeah.
But at the beginning, sometimes you gotta go. You can't keep staring at the thing. You gotta just like leap into it.
I feel like that resonates so deeply with me just in starting my own business, because it's one thing to put up the website and talk about how you're a nutritionist and you have your credentials and you're ready to rock. It is a totally different thing to sit down with clients and do the work and see what comes out of it, because that's how you hone your craft.
Yep.
It's so good. And so many times it's people that push you with that opportunity. When you were pushed, what did the next 24 or 48 hours look like after you left that kitchen? You were like, oh shoot, I have an apron company.
I have a client. Yeah. I mean, it was crazy because like you, when you've taken on clients and you're just like, all right, this is official now. Like I'm officially, Be Well by Kelly. Let's go. Yeah. There is a sense of responsibility, right? That you just took on, where you're like, I got to commit and I can't fail this person. And for me, that really pushed me to figure out every single little mini roadblock that I hit at the beginning, which by the way, were plenty. I was just committed to not failing because he was my chef. I worked for him and he had taken the order from somebody else and given it to me. Like I wasn't going to let the guy down. And I also felt like somebody had just ignited the insides of me with like a torch. I was like, oh my gosh, I get to do this. And then when I told him, like, what do you want? What do you need? What does it look like? What do you want it to be like? It was such a collaboration that I actually got to learn all the things that were missing in the kitchen because I knew that it was wrong. I just didn't have the formula. And so he very clearly was like, well, the material needs to be really nice quality and the pocket corners need to be reinforced. And I want it to drape nicely. And he was telling me essentially like a focus group, what was wrong, what was right. Probably like your first clients told you, hey, I want to get rid of bloating and fatigue and this and that. And you're like, okay, I know how to help with that. So let me create a formula and a plan for that type of things. And then it turns out other people have that same issue. And so you learn so much from the people that you're servicing. And that's what I did. So for the first few years of Hedley and Bennett, I didn't have like some product roadmap. I simply had customers that I was willing to listen to, and they were willing to share with me, which I have a chapter in the book called Humble Enthusiasm. So it's like excited to share, excited to learn. And that just means like how you approach somebody about an idea or something that you're selling. It's not like, I've got it all figured out. Let me tell you about it. Yeah. It's more like, hey, I'm working on something really cool and I'd love to share it with you. And then I'd love you to tell me what you think. And so it's like very collaborative, and then they're bought into your idea, and then they're committed to you, and then they see you succeeding, and then they're like, wow, that's so cool. She's actually growing and I helped her, right? And so there's this real kind of collaborative effort. So those are some of the things that I did at the beginning that I think sometimes people are like afraid to do. But for me, it was like, that was one of the secret weapons.
Oh, it's totally a secret weapon. You just hit the nail on the head because so many times people feel a pressure to know everything, to have it all figured out. Like, oh, I just started this company and I'm already this huge expert. It's the people who say like, oh, well, that's really interesting. Let me go look that up. Let me go see if I can do that for you. Let me see if I can answer you. You are answering someone's question. You are fixing a problem. You're fulfilling a need.
Yes.
And that you're already such a resource. Like you don't have to know everything there is to know about aprons. You just started the apron company.
That's right. And like, I think very much like you, when I would sit down with people, I would really like lean in and listen, but like really listen. And I would treat it almost like I was a doctor and I was diagnosing them. And so I was like listening for cues if they were like, yeah, I don't like the way my staff looks. And, I really want to pull out the blue in the walls in the restaurant because it's a little dark in there. And so then I'm like, okay, so they want a brighter uniform. All right, the kitchens are hot, so they need a lighter material. And I'm taking that and kind of like making notes of the type of, recipe I'm going to give back to them. And then what happens is they feel heard because they were heard. It wasn't just like lip service and I'm just like shaking my head at them and being used car salesman about it, right? And so not treating people like a transaction is another thing that I talk a lot about in the book. It's just like they have to be authentic, genuine relationships with people where you actually care and you meet them and it's like you become friends with them first. And then if one day they become your customer, awesome. But if you're trying to beat them over the head with becoming a customer from day one, you kind of miss the mark. You need to like just get to know them first and actually find out if what your service is something that they even need. And maybe they won't, but that's okay because maybe they know somebody that does. And so like, there's also this whole idea around being willing to hear no, and that a no really isn't a no. It's more like a turn left or turn right. And it's like a detour on the journey. So that's another snippet.
Oh, I love that because that's saying like, that's you being willing to say, hey, you know what? Maybe we're not the right option for you then. But I know this other company that may be able to help you still are like providing value. And that's going to be seen in such a better light than saying, no, we're the answer. In the beginning of your business, it sounds like it was really custom ordered aprons. And how did the bigger vision for Hedley and Bennett from custom orders. And I mean, like ground, like that bootstrapping,
Oh yeah, it was
ground
like
floor
zero,
work.
girl.
Like
it was ground zero.
yeah. Like from one restaurant to the next, like how did you get those first few customers and those custom orders? And then how did you have this vision for this massive brand?
Yeah, it definitely was just this kind of inertia of, all right, if I just get another chef order and if I just get another restaurant, like I got some of the most amazing chefs at the beginning that were so incredibly supportive. Like I remember Nancy Silverton ordering aprons from me, like out of a bag at her restaurant. Like I walked in with a bag of aprons and she bought some from me. And then Michael Voltaggio and then David Chang. And I was just, every time I was, sold an order of aprons, it was like something inside of me like lit up again, like that torch, just like torched.
Yeah.
And I wanted more of it because I wanted to help more people. I wanted to be in front of more people. And it was I was like filling such a need. They're like, oh my God, you're making beautiful aprons with like Japanese denim and they're handmade and they're like durable. This is awesome. Yes, I'll wear that. And to your point, had the little ampersand on the chest. And so you were kind of becoming a part of this like crew of people that were in the know. And so it was definitely like a following. And people would be like, oh, do you know Ellen? Let me connect you to the apron lady. She's got you. And they knew that I was friendly and that I would listen and talk to them. So they felt comfortable sharing their contacts with me. And then I'd be like, oh, totally. I'll call them up. No problem. And all of that just kind of gave me the confidence, right? I was like building this, like I talk about in the book, like a confidence belt. I was building like notches on my confidence belt every time I sold an apron to somebody. And it was honestly like 1, 2, 5, 6, whatever. Then I decided to put a booth up at the Hollywood Farmers Market. So I was working at Providence, the 2 Michelin star restaurant. I was running around being like a full-blown, manufacturing company for Hedley Bennett in the daytime, a one-man manufacturing band with my one sewer who was on the other side of the city. And I would then work all week. And then on Sunday, I would set up at the market and I would listen to people and be like, oh, that's what they need. Okay, that's missing. All right, got it. And so it just kept growing like that. So we went from 1 apron a week to 50 to 100 to 150. And I used to literally get 1 yard of fabric and take it to my sewer and have him sew it and then take it to the person. I mean, it was so like from the 1800s. I don't know what I was doing, but that was how in my mind, I was like, well, this will work. And then it got to a place where all of these chefs were now wearing this stuff, to your point, on TV. Or you'd go to John and Vinny's and Animal and you'd see our aprons. And then people were like, well, that's really cool. What is that? What's that? Who's that? Like, who's wearing that? Where's that from? And so again, that like next layer of collaboration happened where was word of mouth. And then those people were cooks at home and they wanted to be legit, like the chefs that were wearing our gear. So then they went on the internet and looked up hedleyandbennett.com and they started buying from our website. And to me, the website was just kind of this thing that sat there. And if we made a sale, it was like, woohoo. And I didn't even have inventory. It was like literally a sale
made to order.
Go make the apron. And I realized that was actually growing quite quickly, but it was always sort of secondary to the restaurant world because I was so excited about that. And that was my universe. Imagine going from being like a cook to now the person designing gear for like some of the best chefs in the country. So after several years of that, a lot of growing pains and learning how to not just have Ellen Bennett be the one running down the street with a yard of fabric and start hiring people and going through that whole evolution, it dawned on me that the biggest opportunity we actually had was this online situation that we had going on there. And it was just sitting there doing its thing and nobody was tending to it. It was like an overgrown garden that needed love and pruning and adjustment. And sometimes in business, the thing that you like swear by that this is what it's going to be ends up being something different. And that's okay. And that's like letting things go and letting the business become what the business is going to become is also part of just the path and the pivot and the adjustment. And so that kind of aha moment happened a few years ago. And I realized we need a better website. We actually need to do better photography. We need to put time and effort and genuinely take care of this thing. And that's where Hedley and Bennett started morphing into a direct to consumer brand. But I would say the thing that really hit home for me was we did a collaboration with, there was Vans, and we did one with Madewell, and we did one with Parachute Home. And every time we did one of these collaborations on said little website, it would explode and sell out. And I was like, oh my God, what is happening? And so I realized there was this whole other pocket of people that didn't actually know about us, but loved what we were doing and loved the idea of really well-made, timeless gear for the kitchen that works. And, by the way, it's worn by the best chefs in the world. And so then Hedley and Bennett kind of 2.0 became a reality.
That's crazy. I mean, I've had a Hedley and Bennett apron since when I met you years ago. And we gave Sebastian his first Hedley and Bennett apron for Christmas this year because he's my sous chef in his little kitchen tower. It's a vibe. And I think you've created, and this, a cool apron. Like it has brand appeal that people only dream of. Like, can you talk about building this brand? Obviously, you're building it with the coolest chefs. So that's going to get you some street cred and some in the know, underground, other chefs wanting to know about it. But even just seeing that ampersand, how did you come up with that as your logo? How did you come up with the name? Obviously, the Bennett part is a little bit obvious, but talk about building a brand. And was it intentional, or did it just come out of the work?
Yeah, such a good question. I think some of it was that feeling that happens when you're on the journey, where you just have that gut instinct that this makes sense here. And again, if you're not on the journey, it's hard to just figure it all out in theory. And so when I began, I didn't have the ampersand logo, but I realized pretty early on that if I wanted people to be able to identify our aprons, they needed a symbol or something that said, hey, this is, Joe's jeans, or this is Levi's, there's like a thing. And I'd always been very inspired by the Lacoste alligator because it was simple and timeless and elegant. And it didn't matter if you had one from the 60s or 70s, it was still cool today. And I loved that. I loved it because I've always thought about Hedley Bennett as like the long game. This is not a flash in the pan, like, all cute brand that's going to be around for a year. It's like, no. We're planning to be around for 100 years. And so I said, let's make it like that. So we took the and from the middle of the name, Hedley and Bennett. Hedley was my English grandfather. Bennett is my last name. And so it was like a nod to my English and Mexican culture, vibrant and colorful, and then also like dignified and proper on the English side. And I took the ampersand, put a box around it one night late with my ex-boyfriend, and just on like Photoshop, messing around. I was like, that's it. That's it right there. That's the one. Don't change it. Leave it just like that size. And I just knew that it was something that I could put on the apron without it being overwhelming or like feeling like it's Abercrombie and Fitch across the front of your chest or big Gap letters, right? It was simple. And that's how that part of it was born. And then the actual building of a brand is not an overnight journey. It takes time and effort and showing up to events and talking to people and somebody saying, hey, I love this brand. They've been amazing. I've been wearing them for years. That sentence, while it takes 2 seconds to say, actually took years to cultivate. And the trust that your customers have with you and your clients have with you comes from somebody else really amazing who lived a whole journey in their lives saying the sentence, Kelly is incredible. You should work with her. But it took, how many years of you studying, how many years of you sacrificing your own journey to get to that sentence. And that is what people forget. And so it's a long journey. But yet so I've been at it for 9 years. There's people that have been building a business for 50 years and they're still figuring things out. And so getting rid of that idea that things are overnight, I think is important, because there's going to be failures and successes, and the journey is going to be long and windy, and there's just no other way. And when you think you see something that's like a overnight unicorn, it's probably because it was born on TikTok, but there's no other thing that makes it overnight.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah, there are definitely those outliers, but I think the timeless brands and businesses, it's a decade or more of building and iterating and having those failures and having those nights where you cry and those things that don't go well, having those moments where you're like fist pumping in your car when you leave a place, like all of those ups and downs. How do you forage on when you do have those, not the successes, but the falls? And what were some of the falls that you've had along the way?
Yeah. Oh my God. So many falls. It's crazy. I definitely get really quite honest in the book about all the falls, because it's important for people to know that is actually part of the journey. And one of my favorite sayings is, they're not bumps in the road, they are the road. And it's this idea of just like, the journey is going to have potholes, period. There's no road that doesn't. And so just be ready and willing to embrace them when they come. And it's not about the fact that you had a problem that happened. It's really, when is that going to happen and how are you going to deal with it? And I used to get quite like emotional if I didn't do something well. And, it still hurts now, but I've recognized that they're going to happen. And so it's become a little bit more normalized, and I'm more comfortable being uncomfortable. And because I'm comfortable being uncomfortable, I'm less afraid of it. And if you're less afraid of it, it's just kind of like it happens, and you stare the problem in the eyes and you're like, okay, how am I going to tackle this one? And you just march forward versus letting it crumble you, right? And I think last year, what an example of resilience for all of us. Like, we all survived an entire year of the entire world being shook to its core. And yet here we are having a totally normal conversation in the middle of May of 2021. So you're resilient as F.
Yeah.
And you need to remember that, and know that you're stronger than you think you are. And so when these, excuse my French, shitstorms come along, you just like, you embrace, like you hold on and you brace for it and you push through. And so every time I've done that, I learn way more than when I'm being successful. And you get up and your face is bleeding and you got a big old wound across your chest and you're crying, and you just got to keep marching forward, because that is part of the path. And I'll say my last thing is, I saw this really amazing image the other day that I felt resonated so much with me. It was a man, and he had a staircase in front of him, and each of the steps on the staircase was a failure. And yet he was turning it into like a staircase to the next place. And then another guy had all the failures stacked on his shoulders, and it was like squashing him down, all the failures. And so it's like, in the perspective, right? We're all going to have those failures. How do you approach them and how do you feel about them? That's the difference.
I've seen you do this in your business, just in the same way that every restaurant was a notch in your confidence belt. If you're looking at your failures in the same way, then you're doing exactly what you said. You're giving them less energy. You're giving them less power. You're knowing that you can get through them. And it's the failures, it's the falls, I think, that make us go like, oh yeah, I can get up. It's fine. Let's not put too much energy into this. Let's move forward. Let's focus on the successes. Let's focus on the wins. We'll get through this. And then you're not afraid to keep running.
Totally. And a lot of times those failures and those successes could have happened in your life early on. And then sometimes people are like, well, if I hadn't had this happen to me, I could maybe do this. And so you like use it as a thing that you're protecting yourself, because this happened to you, therefore this other thing can't happen to you. And that's kind of in your head too. And so when my parents got divorced when I was 9, it was like the whole world ended for me. And yet I turned it into one of my biggest assets as a little kid, because to me, I was like, all right, I'm more independent now. What am I going to learn? What am I going to do? How can I kind of use this to be able to do more? And it was a very different life than I would have had if my dad was around all the time. And it made me extraordinarily entrepreneurial. And if I hadn't had that, I don't know that I would be as entrepreneurial as I am today. So those challenges you hit really mold you, but like it's how you let them mold you. And it's that decision to say, I want to, I'm going to be this way, or I'm going to be that way. And it really does start with you. Obviously, all kinds of outside factors influence that. But my mom was very willing to just let me try things when I was young. So she was letting me, write the checks for the bills when I was like 13 years old. And she'd let me go grocery shopping when I was like 13, 14. I walked down the street and like buy all our groceries from Ralph's. And it was just every time she let me do that, I was like, I can do more. I will learn how to cook. I'm going to write these checks, and now I'm going to learn how to, balance your checkbook, because I'm learning about that in school. And she just allowed me to show up and learn and fail, right, without huge repercussions. And that gave me even more willingness to just try stuff.
Oh, I love it. Intentional or not for your mom, like that's everything that they teach in parenting books about creating independence and confidence in your children is, watching them climb the jungle gym. And instead of being like, be careful, you're like, I'm going to bite my tongue right now. And if you fall and break your arm, we're going to learn about it.
I'm going to stick my fist in my mouth at this moment.
Yeah. And you'll see all the memes for that when that time ever comes. But like, it is like a real thing as parents, because your mom gave you such a gift. She gave you the gift of figuring it out, of falling, of being independent. Our children are capable of so much more than we even believe them to be, like whether that's cooking in the kitchen or putting their own clothes on, and having the patience to let them just put their shoes on. They figure it out a couple of times, and then all of a sudden they want to do it. And there's that confidence again. Like what a beautiful gift that your mom gave you out of something that I know was probably heartbreaking at the age of 9. What else from your Latinx heritage like shaped you, from like your passions to your drive? Let's talk about the spicy.
The Mexicana side of my life.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see. When I was really young, my mom would let me go to Mexico on my own. I mean, I'm talking like 1-2 years old. And I would spend 3 months at a time with my abuelita in Tampico. And I was surrounded by little kids that were so lovely and so kind, and also so incredibly poor. And yet they were so happy. And so at a really early age, I was able to recognize the difference, because this continued past me being 2 and 3. It was like 5 and 6 and 7 and 9 and whatever. And these friends had, sometimes no floors in their homes and that sort of a thing. And yet I would come over and they'd be like, do you want to have lunch with us or dinner? I'd be like, yes. And they'd be like, cool, we're eating beans and cheese and tortillas. And I'd be like, I'm so excited. Thank you for having me. And it showed me that material was not the thing that actually made you happy. It was like the community and the people that you surrounded yourself with, and the good eggs in your life, if you will. And to have seen that at a young age just meant like, oh, people are really nice and it doesn't matter what they have. And it was a difference from Los Angeles, where a lot of my friends had so much more, and yet they fought a lot with their parents, or they never saw their mom because they were working a lot or whatever. And that was a big learning lesson for me. And so when I began this journey of Hedley and Bennett, like I knew that I needed to have something that I believed in truly and deeply, and that the passion would push me forward. And yes, the details and the processes and all of the above, but it started with something that I actually knew would help other people. And if you don't have that piece, like find something that lights you up and that like lights a torch inside of you, because that is going to help you get through every shitstorm that comes your way that are just inevitable. So that was something that I really value from my Mexican heritage. And then I would also say just their approach to life is so resourceful. And something that I always say to myself and to my team is like, think about what you have and not what you don't have. And when you put an emphasis on the right things, you put energy towards it, right? And if you're thinking about the fact that you don't have an MBA and you don't have this type of investor and you don't have that type of thing, you're just like focusing on all the things you don't have. And yet I grew up in a way that my abuelita, if she needed to put something in the wall and she didn't have a hammer, she'd take off her chancla, her like sandal, she'd slam it into the wall. And it was like, okay, where were we? You're going to go to the store. Let's go, you know? And that creativity and resourcefulness is such a gift because you're just using what you have and being creative and not just like, oh, well, I need to go to Home Depot right now to get that 10-inch hammer to put that one nail in the wall. And you're like, look around your room and see what you do have. So if you're starting a business, if you're doing something, think about what you have and not what you don't have, and be willing to barter those skills for something else that you might need for your business. So whether it's like, for me, it was a pattern. I needed a pattern at the beginning of Hedley and Bennett. And so I told a friend of mine, I was like, well, I work at a 2-Michelin star restaurant. That's like a $300-ish meal. I'll come over and make you lunch or whatever. And then you make me my pattern. Deal? And he was like, yes. And that helped me get something that I needed with the skills that I actually had. Maybe I didn't have money, but I had skills for cooking. So I exchanged that. I mean, don't you feel like those are the types of things that as business owners, you and I have had to do many a times over to just get an opportunity or get a first shot or get a try in something?
Oh yeah. I cannot tell you how many times I wrote articles for free for Talkboard Magazine, My Body Green, Goop, like you name it. Like totally. There were editors and journalists out there being paid to write those articles. And I was like, hey, if I write an article about nutrition, and by the way, it's going to be on X, Y, and Z, and no one's talking about this yet because it's in the research. It's not in the media yet. I'm going to link some studies, but I'm also going to link my Instagram and my website because I need clients. Right. And this is my way of being, my own publicist. I never had PR until my first book was out, and I could only afford to have it for 6 months. And it was just like, gutting to pay those bills. Yeah. 2012 to 2016, I can't tell you how many times I worked with clients for free to get an introduction to some editor or to be invited to some event where I may meet more people. Like it was all about the hustle, but the hustle was fun because I just loved talking about nutrition.
Totally. And it was like the insides of you were just torched up every time you brighten up every time you talk about me. You're like a permanent glowing human, but you glow even harder when you're talking about it. And I think sometimes people might look at the success and say, wow, what did they do? Like, how cool that they have that. And yet you have been, I remember a post you wrote, I think it was last year, and it so resonated with me of like, I had to do this and I didn't have a car. And then I lived with my parents and we did all these things to get to a place. And this is how I made my first protein powder. And just like taking the kind of veil off of the fancy Instagram feelings that people feel FOMO over, but don't actually know the real journey. It's so important. And I love that you do that. And you keep it so real and so honest, because even though now you're like one of the most amazing nutritionists out there and people will line up to work with you, it wasn't always that way. You had to create it out of literal thin air. And that is what being an entrepreneur is all about. It's taking nothing and making it into something out of your like literal willpower. Yeah. Willpower and hustle and showing up. And I love that about you. So you are amazing. And you're totally living the dream first, details later vibe for sure.
Well, I think that, and I did our intro before this because I was just like, this resonates with me so deeply because it was just those day-to-day decisions of like, how am I going to make this happen? And how are we going to get this done? And yes, it takes so much personal sacrifice. And I think in the same token of being like, oh, well, you're the apron lady. And of course, you know everything about aprons. You're never going to ask a client a question. You're just going to sell them on your aprons. It's like the same for nutritionists. Like if I hadn't worked with someone with gout, I maybe didn't know everything about gout until I sat down with them and had to learn like, okay, you've been dealing with gout for all this time. Let me take a beat. I'm going to go look at the research. Let's see what's new and interesting about what's coming out on this
Yep.
exact diagnosis. And then I'll come back to you with some resources as a consultant. Like, you don't have to know everything.
That's
and
right.
then you aren't automatically a multimillionaire in a huge house with a cool car and like all this stuff. And is that really important? Like, those personal sacrifices along the way, you're not unhappy because of them. Like, when we had one car and no nightstands and a sheet instead of a rug for our toddler on the floor, like, I was still living my best life because I was doing what I was passionate about. Can you talk about some of the personal sacrifices you've had to make in your life, in your timelines, in your personal life? Because you've been building this big first baby or business called Hedley and Bennett.
Baby business.
Yeah.
Business baby. No, definitely. I mean, I would say the sacrifices started long before the actual business came around. When I turned 18, I decided to move to Mexico City, and I had gone for 2 months, and my mom just felt like I was sort of lost on my journey here. Everybody wanted to be an actress or a model in LA, and I wanted to cook. And so I was a little bit of an outlier. My parents, frankly, they couldn't afford the school I wanted to go to. It was like, $70,000 for a 2-year program. It was crazy to go to this cooking school. So they said, we can't afford that. I'm sorry. So I went to Mexico for 2 months, and I ended up staying for 4 years. And all of my friends, nobody came to visit while I lived in Mexico, because people were like, what do you mean you're living in Mexico? That's crazy. Like, why are you living there by yourself? What are you doing out there? Isn't it dangerous? Why? Right?
Don't take the green taxis.
Yeah. The green day. Yeah, exactly. And to me, I was like, this is my home. I love it. And
Mexico City. I mean, it is like the roundabouts and the culture and the
it's
buildings.
Incredible.
And like,
but
it's
this
amazing.
Was like, I don't know, 16 years ago or something. So Mexico City wasn't on the cover of Condé Nast Traveler yet.
Yeah.
Right. It was like, what? You're going to Mexico City? And to me, it was incredible. So I went, and I had the time of my life, and I really learned to kind of make something out of nothing there, because I showed up with my one little suitcase and myself, and I said, I'm going to figure this out. And I wasn't figuring it out in LA. So I wanted to change my world. And I got a million different jobs by asking people like, oh, what are you doing? And where's this at? And just asking questions. I found a few friends that were ironically doing modeling jobs and other random things. And I was a gringa, right? Or like white girl. But really I was Mexican. So I spoke perfect Spanish. So I got a job as the lottery announcer in Mexico on television. And I literally announced the lottery numbers every day, like Monday through Friday, for all of Mexico, where I was pointing to the numbers and doing the whole thing. And I looked like a telenovela star with extensions and giant eyelashes. And these jobs to my, very perfectly organized friends' lives in LA were so weird and so bizarre. And Ellen was off the deep end in Mexico, going on this crazy journey. But what I was learning was experience, and how to talk to people, and how to show up and like do the thing. And when you commit to a job, you show up to the job, which was invaluable for when I actually started my own company. And then I was an English tutor. And then I was a simultaneous translator for the Mexican Railroad Union. I mean, the weirdest jobs you've ever heard of. And I was doing that because I had to. And then I got myself a little house, and I started renting out all the bedrooms, pre-Airbnb, by the way. Like, what the hell was I not thinking? I should have started Airbnb. And I was renting them out to students coming to Mexico City from the US. So they were paying me in dollars. So then I was covering all of my rent by doing this, and had my own place. So I felt like I was king of the world. And then I went to culinary school and studied restaurant management while I was in Mexico. And I was able to pay for it with all these wild jobs I had. And then I turned 22, and I looked around at my life, and I was actually making a ton of money by then. I had survived so many crazy hustles in Mexico. I can't even begin to tell you. That would be its own podcast episode. And I looked around and said, this can't be it. There's got to be more. Am I going to do something with this like culinary thing that I just got, or am I going to sit here in my comfort zone and just live out my days in Mexico as this like young girl that now quote unquote made it? And I said, no, I can't do this. So I went back. So I sold everything. Like I decided it and then I sold it all. And I moved back home into my mother's house, into my old bedroom, and started from the ground up and got a job at Providence making $10 an hour being a line cook, because I knew that that was actually what I wanted to do. And that was in my heart of hearts. But that wild journey that I just explained was so pivotal to the growth trajectory that I needed to be on. So it's not a straight path. It's like this windy road, and you make detours and you fall into creeks and you get up and then you get scabbed and then a tree falls on you. And then you're like, oh, I'm going to take a little helicopter to this other little plot of land. And then you're like, that's the wrong land. I'm going to come back. And so I don't know. It's just important that people know it's not a straight line, right? It's just not a straight line.
No, it's not. And I think what you just said hit home for me, because it's so many times I talk to people who think, well, I have this great thing going on and I'm making all this money. And I'm like, the outside world thinks that this is great, because I'm sure in Mexico City, you got your extensions in, your lashes, all the people that buy the lotto tickets are spotting you on the street. Yep. Like you're feeling all but famous. Like it is like, it's amazing when we look at what the world wants of us or what the world expects of us. And it is so much harder to say no. It is so much harder to say like, this isn't working for me and I'm going to go do something harder, but try to find my happiness. Or try to like ignite my passion and like light yourself up, as you say. It's such a beautiful visual, because that's what it feels like. Like, totally. And it sucks and it's scary. And living at your mom's house. I mean, that was us selling my Volvo SUV. It was like, all right, we're going to go down to the Toyota Tacoma with a wire coming out of the front dashboard that we got from my dad's tow yard. And you know what? This is going to be the way we roll around. And it's going to be a little bit embarrassing when I pull up to expensive houses to go in and talk about nutrition. But this is what we have to do to get there. And like, that's, I think, what you show is that you have to be able to say, like, I'm going to pivot because I know this isn't it.
Yeah, that's right. And and who cares if the world around you is saying, well, that's so cool that you have this beautiful house in Mexico City and then you're making so much money and this, that, and the other. It's like, it doesn't actually matter, because if you're not feeling fulfilled and complete, like you're not on the right path, or you just need to now turn left or turn right on the journey and get to the place where you want to be. And it's going to be this ever evolving thing. There's a line I say in Dream First, Details Later, which is when you get somewhere, you got to get to the next somewhere. Life is not just this like stagnant thing that once you land at this one place, you suddenly made it. And it's like, it's a game of goals and getting to the goal and then reaching it and being like, I did that. Okay, how do I get to that next goal? And continuing to push the sort of, bar higher and higher for yourself, because that is what life is all about. And what a gift that we get to wake up every day and try something new and go see which direction you're going to take it today.
I love it. You are the perfect example of leveling up your business over and over and over again. And I just see you behind Hedley and Bennett with this big smile and all this energy. And just, I know it's not always like that, but it's, how much do you think your positivity and optimism plays into your success around your business? And what advice do you have for entrepreneurs like starting out when they're feeling low?
Yeah, you're definitely going to feel low. I'm definitely not smiling all the time. I think I have a general positivity towards the goal, right? There's an optimism about it is possible, right? That is, the possibility is very real within me. But the journey, as I've said a million times today, is a mix of highs and lows. And it's okay to feel low. There's nothing wrong with you for feeling low. I just want to make that really clear. That is an okay emotion if it's the right emotion for the situation. So whatever. You want to cry, cry, because you just had to pay a $10,000 fine for something. Well, that sucks.
Yeah.
And nobody can take that away from you.
Yeah.
The point is just don't like dolly in it, like feel it and then move forward. Say, okay, I got my 24 hours of whatever. Now what am I going to do about it? So to me, that's my like guiding light is it's okay to feel down. It's okay to feel happy. These feelings are going to change as the business is progressing, failing, succeeding, whatever. But I just need to know that where I'm going is where I want to go and that I really believe in it. And that keeps me afloat no matter what happens. And I think that for any entrepreneur starting, you should definitely read my book. And I'm not just saying this because I just wrote it, but I spent 3 years of my life pouring my heart, soul, and guts into this thing so that people knew that there was another way. So that for every person out there that's taking their crazy journey to Mexico knows that they're not crazy, that is selling their Volvo to get a Tacoma, they're not crazy. They're actually doing what a lot of people do and just don't talk about. And there's so many more young, like small business owners out there doing these crazy sacrifices and feeling like they're a weirdo outlier. And you're not. And so just like lean into those failures and know that the journey is going to be a long and windy one, but get ready to be comfortable with that and keep going in the direction of this goal. And if that goal changes, that's okay too. Like it's gonna, the post moves around and don't worry about that. And be ready to just show up and do it. Don't just sit there and think about it too much. Like if you're in your head, you're not in life and you're not doing the thing out in the universe. So like get into the world and do the thing. And if I look back when I was, 24, 25, now I'm 33, it's like I had no idea what I was getting myself into. And the journey has been brutal, but I'm so happy for all of the failures that I had because I've learned so much and I value my team so much more than I ever did because when I first started, it was just like me against the world and I didn't think I needed anybody. And then I realized like, no, you need an entire team around you to help you build this thing as you progress. And these are learnings that you have to learn for yourself. No one can like really force it on you or teach it to you. You just have to feel it. So just get every minute that goes by that you're not doing is like a minute that you're wasting. So just get on the damn path and start walking.
I love it. That is a great way to end. Get on the damn path and start walking and walk right into a Barnes and Noble and get yourself dreams first, details later.
You're like, this is Kelly LeVeque signing off.
My finger is on my earbud.
On the ear.
And this is Kelly LeVeque signing off. Now, Ellen, I mean, we could talk to you for hours, like about building your team, about like everything. It's just, there's so much to uncover. And I know you share it all in the book. So I'm going to just tell everyone, wherever you buy books, jump online, head to Target, head to Barnes and Noble, snag this book. It is going to definitely be the igniter of your passion. If you are looking to be an entrepreneur and you're afraid, I think Ellen's going to share her confidence belt with you and make you strong. So get out there and do it. Love it.
Kelly, you're the best. Thank you for having me. Thank you for being on the Apron Squad, for rocking Hedley Bennett so proudly, and for being such a light to so many people's lives. You are incredible and you're doing amazing things. And I'm so happy to have you in my life. So thank you for having me.
I feel exactly the same way. From any time that I've been at an event with you to any community events that you have at Hedley and Bennett, I mean, like you light up the room and we're lucky to have you too. And every single chef is now cooler because of you. So, thanks, love.
Including you and your little dude.
Yeah. I mean, we feel pretty hip. I cannot tell you anytime I ask Josh, I'm like, hey, bud, you want to be my sous chef? Because normally he's like outside scooting or he's like with his Duplos. And he just like looks at me and he goes, can I wear my apron? I say, yeah. I mean, it's in the bottom drawer. He helps himself. It's a little maroon one with this little like, the white straps. He's almost got the tie down. Well, working on it. You can get it through once and then I got to help him. But it's so cute and it's really fun and you've made it fun. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, lady.
You're welcome. Where can people follow along? Where can they
Where can they
Yes,
find you?
all along on Ellen Marie Bennett on Instagram, and then Hedley and Bennett on Instagram and TikTok. We're in the TikTok craze and it is going.
Really?
So follow us on both. Oh yeah, it's crazy. We've been on there for, I don't know, like 3 months and we have like 400,000 followers. It is a wild, wild adventure over in TikTok. I don't even understand how it works, but we're trying things and we're showing up and we're getting on the path.
I like it. Good for you. Get on board. I'm like another social media platform. I don't know if I can handle that.
I know. It like hurts my brain because I've been on Instagram forever, just like chiseling away on the side of a mountain is what it feels like. Yeah. But TikTok is a whole other beast. And we do all educational videos that are all about like, how do you make onion powder? How do you do this? How do you clean your fridge? How do you clean that? So they're all really like, good info and you would crush on TikTok, just saying.
All right. I'll get on TikTok. Probably
add it to the list.
Probably just to learn all your chef tips, but we'll figure it out. All right.
Oh,
this was
you're
awesome.
Amazing. Thanks,
Love
lady.
You. Thanks for everything.
Thank you for listening to Be Well by Kelly. Please subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Learn more at bewellbykelly.com and follow me on Instagram at bewellbykelly. I would love if you picked up my books, Body Love and Body Love Every Day. They're sold on Amazon and at all major booksellers.